Okay, cool. Let me make this bigger. Oh, where is it? Present. Okay, so welcome, folks. This is seminar session 7. It is a STEM student panel. It's a mixture of current CSU students, alumni students, and folks that have attended CSU for a little bit of portion of their educational career. And it's going to be focusing on internship experience or internship-like experiences. So an example of that would be company projects. And we have 3 lovely panelists here today. So welcome. For engagement, really, I just wanted to touch on these few things real quick. Just engage with how you're most comfortable. Feel free to unmute yourself to ask questions when it's time for questions. Have your video on if you're comfortable. If not, that's totally fine. Utilize the reactions. If you hear something that's really awesome that you can resonate with from the panelists, as well as using the chat box, and just use this space to make connections, because I know panel spaces are great ways to just network and get to know folks where you would like to be at some point. So the format of this panel will start with introductions from our panelists. They'll introduce their name, pronouns, a little bit of the educational background, and a very brief touch on their internship experience that they'll be addressing in later questions. Once we get through introductions, we'll go back through each panelist and they'll answer a set of 4 questions that's going to be bolded on a question slide. And then once they get done answering each of those 4 questions, we'll open it up for folks to ask the panelists a few questions. And then at the end, once each panelist has gone through those 4 questions, as well as taking questions from y'all, we'll open it up to everybody to ask questions. I want this to be a casual space. Please engage as much as you're comfortable. But without further ado, we're going to start with our first panelist with an introduction. So whenever you're ready, feel free to start introducing yourself.
Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Auguste Irichiku. My first name is Amogechi, but I usually go by Augusta. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I studied applied computing technology at CSU. I think that major is now phased out, so it's just like a computer science degree with business application on top of having a minor in business. In my time at CSU, I had 2 internships. So my formal one was I was an IT intern at Elevations Credit Union. And then the following summer, which is like the COVID summer, I just got this one where it's more so for people who lost their internships to just have a project to do during the summer. And that one was pretty cool too.
Thank you, Augusta. And our next panelist, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so my name is Eric Hernandez, pronouns he, him, his, and I graduated from CSU in 2019 in May, so almost 2 years ago. I'm also a master's student at CU Boulder, and I don't know when I'll graduate, hopefully soon, but right now, probably the end of 2022. I had 2 internship experiences during undergrad. 2017, I interned with GE Oil and Gas in Longmont. And then summer 2018, I interned at NASA at Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama. So, yeah.
Thanks, Eric. And our last panelist, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Mohammed. I attended CSU from 2015 to 2017 and transferred to Syracuse University, where I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Bioengineering and a minor in Electrical Engineering. Some of my internship experiences are I had a REU experience at Upstate Medical University in the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, focusing on protein engineering. And I also had a project / co-op with Regeneron Pharmaceuticals from fall 2018 to spring 2019.
Awesome. Thanks, Mohammed. And now we're going to get in some questions. I'm going to make this smaller so I could type questions later on that folks have. But starting with Augusta, whenever you're ready, can you talk through each of these questions?
Yeah, so I had 2 internships. The first one was more formal. So I was an IT intern, and Basically what I did is help people set up all of these computers in this new office building, as well as automate building computers in a sense. So I was like automated, making sure that every computer was outfitted with the same software, had the same security settings and all that jazz. And that's what I did for the summer. It went really well. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned that I could kind of pick up another language, and that the mindset and the skill set for coding is all the same. It's just like a different language, and you just got to learn the syntax and you'll be fine. The other one I did, which was the SOS challenge, summer challenge. That one was interesting because I took more of a business role. So I was more so like the marketing. And so I made this really funny, weird video that hopefully no one ever finds, about like why, or like how we can make going to the store and make going to different outing events safer through an app. So that was pretty fun. Got to meet people. Mostly the people were usually working in Indiana. So I kind of met a lot of people who were from that state. Um, my biggest takeaway that I learned from working at the credit union was that I can do computer science. I think it's kind of easy to sit there and say, oh yeah, the teacher has the answers, so I can just compare it to the answers. But when you work at a credit union and they don't really have the answers, you're kind of providing the solution, and you have to verify that it works for yourself. So that's what I learned about myself in that one. The SOS challenge one, I learned that I can be goofy in a video and then sell it on camera. So that was interesting. How did I secure my internship? So the first one I used Handshake, and I wasn't really one of the better people at networking. So I was just really good at creating a resume that was tailored to the job application and sending it out. I'm a well-oiled machine in terms of sending out applications. So that's how I got my first internship. It's very important to apply early. So if it's been up for more than a week, I feel like maybe try, but I wouldn't, again, you shouldn't hope that much from that opening, but the earlier you apply, I think the better chances you have. The other one, I got an email from a listserv, and then I just applied and I got in. One piece of advice I would give to securing an internship, I would say go to different events. I went to Resume Rush through the Career Center, through SHIP, through a lot of just organizations that just had resume reviews often, and that got my foot in the door to get interviews. I didn't work at those companies, but I always got someone giving me constant feedback in terms of what I could improve on, and that definitely helped build my confidence in that area of becoming more professional. And then it kind of helped me take the next steps in terms of getting better at interviews, and then getting through the first interview, getting through a second interview, and then getting a job offer. And that's all for me.
Thanks, Augusta. And I invite anybody to verbally ask Augusta a question or put it in the chat box, and I'll read it off for you. I'm also trying to think of some too. I'm gonna try to steal one from some students that put it on the pre-activity. Let's see. Can you kind of expand a little bit about the impacts the internships had on you? I know you touched on it a bit with the credit union one of you learned about you can do computer science, and the other one you learned that you could be goofy on camera. But were there any other impacts that you've noticed through these internship experiences?
I would say I learned a lot from the first internship that I got, because it was kind of like real world experience in my specific industry. I learned like what kind of companies I'd like to work for, as well as I learned more about the networking piece and understanding that, yeah, I can go in there and do great work, but it's also important to like network with the people that are also interning with you, as well as people who are at the company. I learned also that I want to work with people more so my age. Everyone kind of had kids my age, and the only people who were my age were the people who were interns. And so because I was the only one in my department, I just kind of um, I felt like the odd person out, but it was really cool to network with them. But I still made friends with the people I interned with. So that was also what I learned about myself.
Awesome, thank you. I do have another question, but I'm keeping my eye on the chat box in case one comes through. What was something that was difficult for you that you had to work through with either of your internship experiences?
For me, I would say the commute. I was kind of picky about where I interned just because I didn't have the means of transportation. So I was very like, okay, I need something that I can get to and from. And that was a challenge. I think I did like 8 hours every day, just like getting to and from work. It was brutal. It was worth it because I got the internship, but I don't think I would ever do that again.
Thank you. And if anybody thought of a question while I was asking some questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat box. Okay, we're going to move on to our next panelist to answer the same set of 4 questions, but feel free to put questions in the chat box or verbalize them as you think of them. So Eric, if you can address the same 4 questions whenever you're ready, that would be great.
Yeah. So for my first experience at GE, I started, it was like a 10-week internship and I had to do, it was like a software related internship, which I was kind of like blindsided by because I was like a mechanical engineering major. So they had me do like some software projects. And it was mostly just doing like Excel VBA and like helping their software work with their like hardware, which was kind of cool. Um, so that was a fun experience, I guess. I got like to know a lot about like big infrastructure, electrical grid hardware. So that was cool. And there was like field trips too. So I like that. They had a good internship program. Um, the second one at NASA was pretty fun. Um, the project, I would say, was a little bit slower. Like it wasn't really fast paced, and um, it had to do with like so when they like made a lot of like hardware together. In this case, it was like one of the rockets that NASA's working on. They have like thousands of drawings that they go through, and they make sure like nothing that's not supposed to interfere interferes. So it was kind of taking on a project in that scope and trying to find any interferences in the hardware when they made the rocket. So that was cool. That internship was out of state, obviously, so I had to like drive over there and like stay in Huntsville, Alabama, which was like a cool experience, just getting to know like a different town and just being outside of Colorado. And then it was just by myself, really. So um, the program there was really cool just because they have a lot of interns. So they always had like field trips, like tours of the center. The Rocket Center was there. So I'd like go on the weekends just to tour the center and just like learn all the history behind the area because that's like the area I worked at is like very historical in terms of like NASA's history for rockets. So that's pretty cool. Um, and it was very hot there and humid. So that sucked. And then biggest takeaway was that a lot of the times these projects you get aren't really like they won't tell you what to do. So a lot of them are like self-guided and you kind of just get out what you put into it. So you kind of have to be the one to go ask questions on what you need to learn, what you need to do, what programs you need to download, what you need to set yourself up for success for the summer. And then I that's kind of what I learned through my internships was that I need to do that because I spent like maybe a week or two. I was like, okay, what do I do now? And then it kind of taught me to just be a self-starter in a way and just do things on my own. Um, how did I secure the internship? The first one I secured an interview through Handshake through CSU. So I did an interview and I got a position for the summer. And then the second one at NASA, it took a little bit more work and a little bit more networking. I was like putting in apps starting my freshman year, and like I think a recruiter came freshman year, and I got their contact information, they gave me their card, and I pretty much stayed in touch with them for like 3 years. Every so often, I'd be like, "Hey, do you know about this internship?" Or like, "Do you know?" I would just ask questions, figure out more information. I even scheduled just a meeting with one of the engineers there just to talk about what they do and just to get my name out there. And eventually, like my junior year, I ended up getting an internship there, which is pretty cool. One piece of advice for securing an internship, definitely you have to network. And I say go above just submitting a resume and application. Like definitely stay in touch, send thank you letters if you get an interview. Just make sure they know more to you than like just your resume and your application. And definitely, like I know some people might be scared, but definitely just apply to ones you don't think you're gonna get. Like you really never know. Like I didn't think I was gonna get one at NASA, but like after a while, it happened. So just keep trying, and like if you have time, just keep applying. You just never know. Um, and then impacts for internship experience. I think it definitely made me getting a full-time job easier just having those on my resume. Right now, I work at Lockheed Martin Space in Littleton, um, and I probably wouldn't have got that job if I didn't have like any of those internship experiences. Or I would have, but it would have just been taking a lot more work. Um, but and then any difficulties? Difficulties, yeah. The my freshman sophomore year, like the first two, because I did 5 years at CSU. The first 3 years were very hard of finding an internship. Like I never got any interviews. I'd applied to so many places and I just never got anything. So it just, yeah, you just really have to try. And the more you network, the more you communicate with people, the more you get your name out there and what you want, especially like make sure you tell people what you want to do. Um, like it'll come to you for sure. Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I have a few questions, but feel free, folks, to put questions in the chat box as you think about them. One that came to mind was when you were talking about self-pacing yourself through projects. How did you kind of balance in between like trying to dig for like all your own information and doing like your own work and research on like where to go next, with asking for help from other senior engineers? How did you go about finding that balance?
Like if I got stuck, that's probably when I just ask the question. Like if you're stuck, like also just say that and you're stuck, and they might provide some guidance. So definitely just don't sit there and just keep the wheels turning until you figure it out. Like there's obviously smart people that work there for a reason because they're smart and they have more experience than you do most likely. So they probably have an answer or at least can guide you. Um, so definitely if you get stuck and you feel like you're kind of just not progressing or maybe not using time efficiently, then just ask for help. Like that's a big thing too. Like also don't try to do it all yourself. Like definitely ask for help. Like you have to ask for help. That's also how you like just meet people and outside of your cube, and you just never know. Like somebody, you might ask somebody for help and they'll be like, hey, do you have some extra time? Can you help me on this project? And then you might just branch out to go do another project. I don't know. When you're an intern, it's a lot easier for you to kind of just branch off to different areas you want to, and just learn. Like it's a time for learning. So ask questions.
Awesome, thank you. And I have another question. Um, Lots of times for students, or at least for some students, it may be like intimidating to like reach out and connect with a professional to just set up time to talk like you did with an engineer at NASA. So do you have any like general advice for students with just building up confidence with wanting to schedule that meeting or anything to include?
Mm, I guess if you want to build up confidence to do that, at least well, like try to research, like maybe not stalk them, definitely not stalk them, but like know at least generally what they do, what field they're in, like maybe not exactly their job title and what they do, but like what does their company do, um, along those lines. So you kind of have some questions to ask, some starter questions. Maybe if you do know their position, maybe ask, maybe just do some background research on like what do those positions do, you know, like it just helps knowing some background when when you don't have as much confidence. So I guess you don't feel completely like lost when you're gonna go do that. So definitely just do some research, some background research. It doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to know everything, but it just helps. Also, doing it in person, like for me, is pretty hard still. So like use LinkedIn, obviously. Like you never know. Especially for like alumni. Like I'll most more likely respond to like somebody on LinkedIn if they're like an alumni and I know that they went to school and did the same program I did, um, versus just some random person that's like I don't know anything about. Not that I won't respond to them, but like definitely just use like alumni to your advantage. Because obviously like we're here to help. Like me myself, I would help out somebody from CSU. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Mhm.
I'm going to pause just in case somebody has a question before I ask another one. I'm also trying to remember the other question I asked you. I'm like completely blanking. Feel free to put in a question in the chat box if you have thought of any. Okay, I'll ask you another question. So you mentioned for your first internship experience that you had to learn something outside of what you were studying. How did you go about learning that new material? And I think it was Excel VBA. How did you go about that? What was your approach?
Yeah. So like we never use Excel, like at least in our program, like it's rare that we use like Excel VBA. Like it's usually just like MATLAB or I don't know. I feel like we didn't do programming that much. Like my first couple years in the program. So that was like when I had to like start programming during that internship, which because we would only do mostly just do like CAD or analysis, some other engineering tool. Um, Now it's changed now, but a lot of Google, definitely a lot of Google, like just Stack Exchange and just you'd be surprised like how many like if it's a programming question, you'd just be surprised how many people have the same question online. Like literally just Google your problem and it will probably come up, especially if it's like program related to most languages. Like there is a lot of resources for that. Um, so that's what I did. I mean, I would just Google and just eventually like I just found like a bunch of pieces. Like I was just pretty much building a puzzle and I found like a bunch of pieces here and there in Google and I was able to like put it all together to make it do what I needed it to do for my project. I think that's the case for most times you're programming. Like you just Google stuff and you just copy paste it to your program and just integrate it till it works for it to do what you want it to do. So that was kind of my case. But yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for answering my questions.
Yep.
Whoops. So now we're gonna go to our final panelist, Mohammed. So whenever you're ready, Mohammed, speak through these 4 questions.
Hello, everyone. So During my collegiate undergrad career, I had 2 internship experiences. I had a co-op/project with Regeneron, and also I did an REU at Upstate Medical University. So for Regeneron, I worked with a team of students and we helped design like biodegradable PPE for Regeneron in order to help them kind of meet like the new green standard that they were aiming for as a company, because they use a lot of like protective equipment, but that really takes a toll on like their green footprint. So they wanted us to come up with like alternate materials they could use to create protective equipment. And then for Upstate Medical University, I created DNA constructs. So basically designing primers to cut a certain segment of DNA and then using a PCR to kind of glue those 2 pieces of DNA together to create like a new DNA. And through that, we injected that DNA into E. coli cells and kind of forced them to produce a certain type of protein. So basically it was like protein engineering. One of the biggest takeaways was not to let imposter syndrome control you. Because I think oftentimes when we're in internship positions, we kind of think, oh, I don't know this, or like we think we're not smart enough to do something. But like you have to realize as an intern, you're not there to just, you're there to learn, you're there to like take advantage of the opportunity that they've given you. They don't expect you to know everything. And they just want to see like your thought process through the project and through the experience. And I secured my internships. So for Regeneron, it was through the school. So the school at Syracuse University, we kind of have like a project course where the school helps students team up with companies around the area. So Regeneron kind of came and pitched this project idea and wanted to see if any students wanted to be on board in helping create this biodegradable PPE. And then for the upstate opportunity, I kind of attended a lecture from this professor about like the research he was conducting, and I wanted to get involved in his lab, but he didn't have any spots open. So he kind of directed me to another professor that was doing similar research. So that's how I got connected with that professor, and he had an REU program already set up. So he kind of just told me to apply, and I got in for the summer. It was a like 10-week REU experience. So it was very like eye-opening to see like how research differs from like undergrad to like in a graduate setting. And one piece of advice I would give STEM students for pursuing an internship would be just to like connect with anyone, like professors, faculty, students, alum, because you never know what connections other people have. And once you forge that relationship, people are willing to like connect you with people to advance you academically or professionally.
Awesome. Thank you, Mohammed. I invite anybody to ask Mohammed some questions, either verbally or through the chat. And I can start us off with one while hopefully some comes in. So you mentioned that you kind of worked through imposter syndrome. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think a majority of STEM students kind of have this notion that, oh, I'm STEM, I'm supposed to like already know everything. And I kind of worked through it in a way that like, yeah, I do not know, like kind of convincing myself like it's okay to like ask questions. It's okay to like say like, I don't know, or like, can you elaborate on this even further? Cause like that's like shows like an initiative to learn and like initiative to like expand your thinking, because just like just saying, oh, I'm not gonna ask because I'm gonna like look dumb is kind of setting you up, like it's a roadblock in your advancement. So you're just like boxing yourself in and you're not gonna go anywhere if you let like imposter syndrome control you.
Thank you. Another question I have is, what are some things that you learned about yourself? Like, did you learn that you have new interests in the work that you were doing? Did you learn that you didn't like something? Like, what did you learn about you specifically through these experiences?
Through these experiences, so as a bioengineering major, it's like a very broad engineering pathway with like a lot of avenues that you can go through. So like these two experiences kind of solidified where I want to go with my degree, especially the REU. I kind of want to get more into like the genetic engineering sector of it, as well as like cell and tissue engineering. But I also got exposed to like the biomaterials aspect through the Regeneron experience, and kind of want to also look at how I can use my bioengineering degree in a environmental engineering context. So like biomaterials and finding like green solutions to stuff that we use today.
Thank you. Let's see. In your internship experiences, did you find yourself learning new skills as well as using what you've learned in the classroom? And if so, can you talk a little bit about both of those, kind of what you've learned that was new and then what you've applied from your coursework?
So for the Regeneron co-op sauce project, it was kind of, we saw the engineering process not as like just research, but kind of like research and development, and even like delved into like the business side, like cost analysis of producing this biodegradable PPE. So it kind of allowed me to like see the like research product and then finish, like kind of seeing the supply chain of engineering in a sense. And then also my REU at Upstate Medical University, I learned a lot about genetic engineering and kind of creating new plasmids.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to open it up to questions to all of the panelists. So feel free to ask any internship related question you may have. And I challenge y'all to at least ask one question. And if you can't think of any, feel free to share that too, if everything they shared so far has been helpful. So we have a question from Kayla. Are most internships out of state for STEM programs? And anyone or all of you can touch on this.
I could say something. Not really. They're generally no. Like you can find internships for just about anything you want in any state. For the most part, there are certain states that, like, for I guess engineering science related, there are some states that do have like more companies, more of a sector for whatever field you're in. Like in my case, Colorado happens to be like the #2 state for aerospace. So there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of aerospace companies here that offer internships for that. Obviously, like California and Massachusetts have like biomedical stuff, pharmaceuticals, if you're interested in that. Obviously, like IT, computer, Silicon Valley specifically. Yeah, so it's not really, I guess it's not really that general. Like, yeah, there's internships for what you want in most states if you find them. Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Anybody else can hop on that question as well if you feel comfortable answering.
Yeah, I agree with Eric. Like, you can find internships anywhere, but specific companies are based in specific locations. Like he said, like some states are known for a specific type of industry. So in my case, like bioengineering and biotechnology, like Massachusetts, like a lot of like East Coast and like California is basically where the majority of like biotechnology and like biomedical engineering internships are located, because a lot of the companies are headquartered there. So I would say if you're looking for internships in a specific industry, kind of look at where the companies are located, like, oh, what state our most CS companies are like located or whatever. So kind of like do your research like that. But if you want to stay in state, there's definitely like internships available anywhere. You just have to like look.
Yeah, I guess another point to add, if you're looking for a specific like company culture or company size, location does kind of have some influence to that. A lot of like startup companies generally tend to be around areas where there's a lot of students, a lot of graduate students, a lot of education going on. So if you want to work at a startup, like for example, like CSU, there's a bunch of startups in Fort Collins. CU Boulder, there's a bunch of startups in Boulder. If you want if you want to work for a company with that type of culture, more startup, new, you get your feet a little bit more wet, then definitely wherever there's big schools that are known for that type of research, you'll find those internships there.
Awesome. Thank you all for answering that question. Before we take more questions, I just wanted to recap kind of the themes or like general points I've been hearing. For securing internships, I've heard a lot of utilizing Handshake, as well as going to networking events. Another piece that I heard was just working on like building your network and making those connections, which is awesome to hear. What else? For the question that Kayla gave, the big thing that I heard from that is that there's like well-known areas or like hotspots for different fields of study for STEM majors, but you can pretty much find an internship anywhere if you just look a little bit. But with some things that I noticed that was being shared, I invite any other questions that folks have as well, and I'm keeping an eye on the chat box. And I'm going to steal another question that students submitted today. Let's do this one. In y'all's opinion, when is the best year of college to begin internships? And anyone or everyone can answer this one.
I could start for that question. So the best year, I would say, like, there isn't like a timeline to like secure an internship. I would say even like I've seen people secure an internship after their first semester of freshman year. So it's kind of just like working at it, kind of like coming in and like leveraging relationships you already have, or like creating new relationships while you're in your undergrad career. So I don't think there's like a timeline. I would say the best year or like the most common year that people look for internships is after their sophomore year, because they kind of get, they're kind of done with their general classes, and junior and senior year, you get into more major specific classes. So an internship kind of provides that experience of like, oh, um, this is like the experience you're gonna get from your major. Like, so you know before your junior or senior year, like, oh, is this really what I want to do? So I think like after your sophomore year is usually the time where people start applying or looking for internships.
I would say definitely the earlier the better. Obviously, just the more experience you have, um, I think it might make job hunting a little bit easier. Um, that's not to say like if you don't have one your freshman or sophomore year, you're like doomed. Like definitely like if you don't have one, like it's gonna be okay. Like you don't need an internship to secure anything after college. Um, and I think what Mohammed did was a good idea also. There's REUs, which I wish I would have known of earlier, like in while I was in undergrad, because those are definitely like alternatives to internships, or I guess they're sort of internships, just like research positions. Um, and you'd be like surprised just like how many REUs there are. Like you could find them at Harvard, Stanford, all these universities. There's all kinds of programs for REUs, so that's pretty cool. Like if you're having a hard time finding an internship where you want to intern at, definitely look into those. Um, Also, you'd just be surprised like if you can't find an internship, like just how many professors have like maybe like they need help over the summer with research or something. Just ask around. Like just asking around will help you get to the right place. So don't feel like an internship's the only thing to do over the summer. Like there's definitely a bunch of alternatives, and um, you'll be fine if you don't have one.
Yeah, I'd agree with what both Mohammed and Eric said. Um, I think it's good to like start looking for them early, because I know for myself, I did go to some of the career fairs as a first year and second year, and you end up seeing some of the same people. One of the gentlemen that I kind of kept seeing at the career fair ended up recommending me for 3 internships at their company. He's like, if you don't get one of them, you're gonna get, you're like, if you don't get all 3 of them, you're gonna get at least one. But you know, COVID happened, but it was really cool to kind of like build that relationship, just kind of just starting early and doing small things like, you know, taking a lap around the career fair, saying hi to people, taking pamphlets, asking 1 or 2 questions. And that's something small that you can do that kind of gets you in the mindset to kind of be better at like applying for internships once you're like ready to start doing that.
Awesome. Thank you all for answering that question. I want to open up to any final questions because I think we've gone through a lot so far. So if anybody has any last questions, and feel free, panelists, if you want to pose a question into the space too, feel free to do so. But this is the last round for questions. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, panelists, for answering a ton of these questions. I hope it was helpful for our students. But that wraps up the panel, and we're going to go into reminders, and then we'll be done for the night. So there's not too many reminders for this week. The only thing that's due is the post discussion board as usual. Oh, that's the wrong date. It's April 2nd at 11:59 p.m. If you have any other questions that you would like answered in general around internships, feel free to put it on the pre-activities discussion board. If you weren't able to put any questions, feel free to put it on there. This week we have a family group community event that's happening. So all of the family groups are coming together this Thursday, April 8th from 5 to 6 via Zoom. And y'all will be having like a little game night. You'll be doing Scribblio, so nothing too stressful. Next week, or not next week, next time. So the Monday after spring break will be our final panel, which will be a faculty connections panel. And these are some of the areas that some of our faculty members are coming into the space with. So we have a psychology professor, a civil engineering professor, geosciences, and microbiology. So covering a lot of areas. So definitely try to make that on April oh, numbers are hard. 19th at 5 p.m. That'll be when the panel is. That Sunday leading into Monday, April 18th, will be the peer activity, which is just posting some questions that you have for faculty members like these previous two panels, and then the regular post discussion board that'll be due that Friday, 11:59 p.m. During that same week will be the last week for drop-in hours for the STEM peer mentors. So definitely utilize those if you would like to. For other reminders around like either resources or events that are happening around campus or in the AAC. The STEM Peer Mentors created a resources and events module that's been live, I think, on campus for about a week now. That's sorted by AAC and campus. So you'll find things like the STEM research series in the AAC events, and then campus events. You'll find things like the research symposiums that are happening, and they try to do a good job of keeping it up to date regularly. So definitely check that out if you want to have like a change of pace and want to do something different in this virtual setting. And then if you would like another source to get different information of like what's coming up, definitely check out the newsletter. That's a screenshot on the right of who it's being sent from and kind of what it looks like. But that's all for reminders. So we are done for tonight. Thank you again, panelists, for taking the time to be here with our students. And students, I hope you learned a lot from our panelists. But that is all. I'm going to hang back in case you have any questions. But have a good rest of your week and have a good spring break and enjoy the warm weather.
Thank you.